Erickson Show. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I don't know if you know, but the people in Texas are Neanderthals. Joe Biden, the president of the United States, was asked what he thought about Texas and Mississippi reopening, and he said it was Neanderthal thinking. Listen to this.
Texas, I think it's a big mistake. Look, I hope everybody's realized by now, these masks make a difference. We are on the cusp of being able to fundamentally change the nature of this disease because of the way in which we're able to get vaccines in people's arms. We've been able to move that all the way up to the end of May to have enough for every American, to get every adult American to get a shot. And the last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime, everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it. It still matters. I carry a card with me, I don't have it, I put it on my desk. As of yesterday, we had lost 511,874 Americans. We're going to lose thousands more. This will not occur. We'll not have everybody vaccinated until sometime in the summer. We have the vaccine to do it. Getting a shot in someone's arm and getting a second shot, you're going to take time. And it's critical that they follow the science. Wash your hands, hot water, do it frequently, wear a mask, and stay socially distanced. And I know you all know that. I wish the heck some of our elected officials knew it. So thank you very much.
Notice the wink and the nod to the media. Y'all all know this. Y'all are the smart, not like those Neanderthals in Texas. So much for unity. The media, of course, is just all outraged by this. And, of course, they've trotted out Beto O'Rourke. Beto now says he wants to run for governor in Texas. If you've seen the polling in Texas, you would know that's not wise. Beto wants to run away from his family. It seems Beto O'Rourke doesn't want to stay home. Did you read the awkward profiles of Beto and his relationships with his kids and his wife? Beto seems to want to run somewhere far away. He doesn't want to grow up. And, well, now they've trotted him out on MSNBC to bash Texas and Governor Abbott.
They literally want to sacrifice the lives of our fellow Texans.
Literally.
For, I don't know, for political gain, to satisfy certain powerful interests within the state. And this isn't hyperbole. You heard our lieutenant governor, arguably one of the most powerful positions in the state of Texas, say on Fox News at the beginning of the pandemic, we are willing to die. Old people are willing to sacrifice their lives in order for the economy to reopen. It won't just be any older Texans, however, who will die. We know disproportionately Black and brown Texans who do. You heard our former governor, Rick Perry, say, we will take blackouts that resulted in the death of an 11-year-old boy who froze to death in his bed in the trailer where he lives, in the death of an 84-year-old grandmother who froze to death in her home, of a Vietnam veteran who froze to death in his truck. More than 100 deaths, at least so far, that we know of in the state of Texas. Due to this, Perry says, we'll take that rather than take federal oversight and regulation. And now this mission accomplished deal from Abbott yesterday saying we are done trying to fight COVID, even though, as you say, Biden has told us that every adult in America can be vaccinated by the end of May. I can see the end of May from where I sit right here. We just need to. We just need to run through the end of May
from where he sits.
He stopped and left us to our own devices.
You know what? Whatever happened to the self-reliant Texans? Beto wants to curl up in the fetal position and suckle Uncle Sam's man boob. Going after Texas and Mississippi. Here's a little more of Beto. I'm sorry, but you got to hear this.
But just because he's surrendered and given up to the virus doesn't mean that we have to. Wearing a mask is still something that we can do. Double masking, as the CDC recommends.
Double masking. That's right. Beto wants to rush for double masking now. You can see if he were governor of Texas, the whole place would be shut down in perpetuity. There's a reason I highlight all of this stuff. When Donald Trump was president of the United States, the media accused the Republicans of politicization of the virus, and they still do. Joe Biden, president of the United States, accuses Texas and Mississippi of Neanderthal thinking. But time and time again, the data was wrong. I'm old enough to remember when Brian Kemp, the governor of the state of Georgia, decided to reopen the state of Georgia. And the media excoriated Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia. They said that Brian Kemp was engaged in human sacrifice. He was engaged in human sacrifice. That's what they said of Brian Kemp when he decided to reopen the state of Georgia. They attacked him repeatedly for saying that he was going to reopen the state. They attacked Brian Kemp. They condemned him. The president of the United States was critical of him. The media came after him. And it turns out he was actually right. If you want some reflection on that, here, for example, is April 22nd of 2020. Here is Stacey Abrams on Brian Kemp reopening the state of Georgia.
I think it's important to put in context Georgia's place in the national economy. We're the 8th largest state in the nation, but we have the 14th highest infection rate and the 7th slowest testing rate. What that means is that these jobs that are reopening, these businesses that are reopening, are going to force frontline workers back to the work without having been tested, without having access to a healthcare system to help them if they are in need. Georgia refused to expand Medicaid. We have one of the highest rate of closures of hospitals. And we do not have people who've been able to get access to the unemployment benefits that could allow them to take care of themselves while they're at home. The worry is that by trying to push a false opening of the economy, we risk putting more lives in danger. And there's nothing about this that makes sense. The mayors of Atlanta, Albany, and Savannah have all questioned the wisdom of doing this. And the fact is the governor didn't consult with mayors before making this decision.
That was Stacey Abrams at the time. That was Stacey Abrams blasting Brian Kemp for reopening the state of Georgia. Here's Sanjay Gupta on CNN at the time.
Sanjay, before you go, I want to ask you, your governor, Governor Kemp of Georgia, is starting to lift restrictions and in Georgia, even though Georgia has not met the guidelines that President Trump and the White House have put out of 14 days decline of new coronavirus cases. You think this is a public health mistake, yes?
This is a public health mistake. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, look, I think it's reasonable to say this is a tough call for the governor because I'm sure he has a lot of pressure on him, but this is not a tough call from a public health standpoint at all. And, you know, the more I think about it, Jake, the more I realize this is almost all risk and no reward, because even if you do open things up, you know, you talk to people around here, Jake. I live here. You talk to people, not just within the healthcare community, but people are going to be very understandably nervous about going to these places. Has that doorknob been sterilized? Is the person who's about to give me a haircut, have they been tested? Has this building been disinfected in some way? What about the ventilation? If I sit at a restaurant, I'm there for over an hour. That's prolonged contact with people. You know, I'm not trying to alarm people, but how do you justify potentially putting people at risk without truly getting the rewards from reopening businesses?
Well, we got the rewards because it turns out the risks were overstated. It's worth noting Sanjay Gupta there worried about doorknobs. We now know that we can't trace infections back to surface contact. Building sterilizations, we now know that we can't trace infections to unsterile buildings. The President of the United States criticized Brian Kemp as well. The President of the United States at the time was Donald Trump, and he was unhappy with Brian Kemp. It's worth noting that Brian Kemp turned out to be right. Now the president has other grievances with Brian Kemp, but it turns out Brian Kemp was right. And all of the people in the media who said the governor was wrong, they never apologized to him. So much of the science, you heard that clip from Sanjay Gupta in April of 2020, talking about sterile doorknobs, sterile buildings. We now know that a lot of that is now the viral theater. It's not actually necessary. Even the CDC has moved on from that, wiping doorknobs and things like that. So why don't we wait and see? Why don't we wait instead of attacking Texas? You've got the president of the United States now, Joe Biden, saying it's Neanderthal thinking, that Texas is going to sabotage everything. Why don't we wait and see? Why don't we trust people? See, there's a story out. Where is this? Jonathan Chait has a great point. He's a progressive. He writes in New York Magazine, headline, "Zero COVID risk is the wrong standard." Oregon Governor Kate Brown has been fighting to reopen the state schools, some 80% of which remain fully remote. Her efforts included providing schools with masks, testing, and ventilation, and giving teachers access to vaccines. Portland Association of Teachers President Elizabeth Thiel remained unmoved by these offers. "It landed a bit as a trap," she told the New York Times. "It was like, we're giving you the vaccine, now open schools for live instruction no matter what. But these are life and death decisions we need to get right." Thiel's stance lies towards the extreme end of the spectrum, but it's hardly unique. Many teachers' unions have insisted, in contradiction to the CDC's official guidance, that schools should be reopened only when all teachers are vaccinated, and in some cases, not even them. The misalignment between the self-interest of teachers and public interest certainly helps explain these decisions. Many cities and states have closed schools while opening bars and restaurants because bar and restaurant owners have a huge personal stake in accepting health risks while teachers do not. But union opposition is not the only reason why schools have remained closed. Public opinion has played a strong role. Polls find that Democrats in particular are much more hesitant than Republicans to resume in-person education, even though public health authorities recommend doing so. Teachers are both influenced by and an important influence upon the broader universe of progressive opinion. Democrats tend to defer to the authority of teachers, just as Republicans defer to the authority of police, and most teachers are Democrats. Teachers are hesitant to accept even small risks because they share a belief system with many other Democrats. And that belief system, or at least the purest version of it that comes to the force at the end of the pandemic draws within sight, could be called zeroism. Zeroism is an inability to conceive of public health measures in cost-benefit terms. The pandemic becomes an enemy that must be destroyed at all costs, and any compromise could lead to death and is therefore unacceptable. That's what we're dealing with Texas and Mississippi. You know, you don't have to leave your home. You don't have to leave your home. You don't have to go to the grocery store where they make you wear a mask, and you don't have to go to the grocery store where no one wears masks. It's on you to be safe. At this point, we know we're not getting rid of the virus. The virus is not going to go away. And there will be some people who refuse to get vaccinated. Here in Georgia, the governor of the state has announced that he's going to allow teachers to get the vaccine. And the reason he can do it, specifically the Johnson & Johnson one-dose vaccine, is because only about 40% of teachers in the state want the vaccine. Most of them do not want it. So there's enough to go around based on that. We're not getting rid of the virus. We're going to have to navigate through it. And I don't think Governor Abbott in Texas is that much of a hero for reopening the state, in large part because Abbott is also trying to distract from energy failures a couple of weeks ago in Texas. He'd rather get attacked from the left on this than from the right on everything. But they were so wrong about Georgia. The Democrats were completely wrong. The media was completely wrong about Georgia. I played you the clips. Sanjay Gupta, a doctor, medical professional, on CNN said that there were all risk and no reward. You wouldn't get the reward from opening the economy because you wouldn't open the economy because people are too scared to go out. Georgia now has the fastest growing economy in the nation. In fact, the Democrats want to punish Georgia in the COVID relief bill for being so successful. The Democrats have structured their COVID relief plan so that Georgia will get less money than it would otherwise be entitled to because its economy is doing the best. The Democrats and the media and many of the professional prognosticators in healthcare were wrong about what would happen in Georgia. Now they're freaked out about Texas and Mississippi. We know that lockdowns really didn't work. States that had onerous restrictions and lockdown requirements like California actually were doing worse than Texas per capita. Maybe with the virus not going away, maybe it's time to do something different. It's very dogmatic, very much like guns. The only solution from the left is gun confiscation as opposed to make everyone own a gun and learn how to use it. In a country with the Second Amendment, maybe we should rethink how we handle gun violence in the country. Maybe we should, given that so many people were so wrong about lockdowns and everything else, maybe we should allow states to think different and see what happens. And if Texas is wrong, Texas is wrong. The voters can hold the Republicans accountable. But what if they're right? That, to me, seems to be the big fear for the left. What if Texas is right?
Want to be on the show? Call Eric now at 877
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Well.
I just wanted to ask you, with all these calls in the last couple of days calling for your resignation from some Democrats, certainly not all Democrats, but some Democrats, is today, since you've been gone for about a week, is this your way of saying, I'm certainly not resigning?
Yeah. Dave, look, some politicians will always play politics, right? That's the nature of the beast. I don't think today is a day for politics. I wasn't elected by politicians. I was elected by the people of the state of New York. I'm not going to resign. I work for the people of the state of New York. They elected me, and I'm going to serve the people of the state of New York. And by the way, we have a full plate. We have COVID. We have recovery. We have rebuilding. We have a teetering New York City. We have a terrible financial picture. We have to do vaccines. So no, I'm going to do the job the people of the state elected me to do.
He's going nowhere. And you know, I mean, Ralph Northam didn't, and Democrats got over that and moved on. And you know, he went all woke. Ralph Northam did. And Andrew Cuomo, I'm sure, can do that, and they'll get back to him. But, you know, Dahlia Lithwick of Slate, who is a progressive activist who writes about the Supreme Court and was one of the people to really be excited about the attacks on Kavanaugh, went out of her way to promote the attacks on Kavanaugh, demanded that the women be heard from. Well, now she's thinking maybe we need due process first. Governor Andrew Cuomo, she writes, stands accused by 3 different women of sexual harassment, and yet, oddly enough, he's still serving as governor, and that, friends, may be a good thing. In Monday's New York Times, Michelle Goldberg suggests that the failure of high-profile Democrats to demand Cuomo's resignation in the face of credible and contemporaneously reported claims about inappropriate comments, texts, and behavior suggests a diminution in the power of Me Too. As she argues, not incorrectly, if this scandal had broken a few years ago, high-profile Democrats would have felt no choice but to call for Cuomo's resignation. Goldberg also surmises that part of this failure stems from a public pivot away from gender to race concerns and a lingering regret on the part of Democrats about ejecting Al Franken from the Senate. Goldberg's points are all true enough. But what if the lesson here is not that Me Too has somehow failed or lost steam, but rather that the Me Too movement, which rightly encourages people to speak out about abuse, prompting plenty of reckoning and buckets of important journalism, was never sufficient to do all the work of remedying sexual predation? That's right. You got to have due process and fact-finding and all that. Now that Kavanaugh is on the Supreme Court and Donald Trump's gone, we can go back to not believing all women. Amazing how the progressives work. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Well, the House, as I told you yesterday, the House of Representatives has barely passed H.R. 1. The likelihood of it coming into law is pretty slim. It doesn't have enough support among Democrats in the Senate. And then there's the issue of the filibuster, which they're probably not going to be able to overcome or scrap it, even though there's now, you're racist and you're denying people the right to vote if you maintain the filibuster. That pressure's not going to work on people like Joe Manchin. He doesn't care. The progressive Democrats in the House of Representatives unsuccessfully pushed an amendment that would have lowered the federal voting age to 16. Gives you an idea of where the progressives are in the House, how radical they are. They really actually wanted to lower the voting age to 16. Now, I need to talk to you about this from the right. And I hope all of you will pay attention to me. There are still a number of people, including probably most of my listeners, who are convinced that the November election was stolen. I'm not going to relitigate or argue the issue with you. Your mileage may vary on the issue, but you need to pay attention to me right here. This is really important. Some of the president's more vocal proponents and supporters, including people in talk radio, are making a strategic mistake in how they talk about H.R. 1. They are claiming that H.R. 1 will ratify the things Democrats did in November to steal the election. Julie Kelly, who is one of the president's more rabid supporters out there, is ridiculing conservatives who didn't believe the election was stolen in November, now decrying H.R. 1. She says that H.R. 1 legalizes all the rogue, unlawful rules of the 2020 election. I want you to be very careful with this argument, because it's factually not true. And the result might be that a lot of people who should care about H.R. 1 won't care about H.R. 1 if the president's most vocal supporters try to make these claims. H.R. 1 goes well beyond anything you think might have happened in November. H.R. 1 would mandate universal, automatic, same-day voter registration. Some states already have that. Most states do not. Most states did not have it in November. H.R. 1 would make it the rule that when you show up on Election Day in November and you're not registered to vote, you automatically get to register to vote. H.R. 1 would abolish voter identification requirements. Most states now have such requirements and had them in November. H.R. 1 would get rid of them. H.R. 1 allows felons to vote. Most states don't have felons voting. H.R. 1 would overrule states. H.R. 1 abolishes states drawing their own congressional redistricting. That wasn't the case in November. That would be the case under this legislation. H.R. 1 eliminates the bipartisan structure of the Federal Elections Commission. Right now, you have the same number of Democrats as you have Republicans. It is inherently false to say that H.R. 1 takes the things Democrats did in November and make them national law. There are some things Democrats attempted to do in November that would fall under H.R. 1, but the overwhelming bulk of H.R. 1 does things Democrats couldn't even do in November. If the president's supporters run with this line that the Democrats are just doing what they did in November, they're going to have a lot of people who should be fighting this sit on the sidelines. When you see people like Julie Kelly attacking critics of H.R. 1 who didn't believe the election was stolen, you see her essentially saying, don't come into the fight, or we're going to shame you when you do come into the fight. I don't believe H.R. 1 is going to pass the Senate. But this is still at this moment an all hands on deck issue for conservatives to pay attention to the progressive agenda. It is a strategic mistake for the president's allies, President Trump's allies, to say, well, we don't want you, screw you, you didn't think the election was stolen. Now we're going to ridicule you for decrying this because all this is what the Democrats did in November. If anything, this should tell you how dumb many of the president's most ardent supporters were about their handling of November. For them to tie these two things together, November and this, discredits their arguments about a stolen election, because if they can't understand what's actually in H.R. 1 and they're selling false arguments about it that undermine the actual extent of what H.R. 1 does, they're not building a coalition of people. I have never understood the politics of addition by subtraction. That's what Common Core does. I'll never forget my kids having to learn subtraction, where you had to do an entire page of addition when you could have just subtracted it. And the Trump team right now, the president's most ardent supporters in fighting H.R. 1 seem to want to engage in coalition building by subtracting from the coalition. Oh, you didn't think the election was stolen in November. We don't want to hear from you about H.R. 1. Well, guess what? Those of you who said the election was stolen in November, whether you were right or wrong, most of the nation disagreed with you and moved on. And they're going to disagree with you now and move on and not take H.R. 1 seriously if you people keep yelling at anyone who wants to raise the serious issues of H.R. 1. When you misrepresent the legislation, no one's going to take you seriously. Again, H.R. 1 does a ton of things that Democrats did not do in November. To say that H.R. 1 just ratifies what the Democrats did in November is a lie. Not only is it a lie, it undermines the effort of people who should take it seriously to take it seriously. Why do they need to take it seriously if you're peddling lies about it? They will think when you actually tell the truth about it that you're lying on that as well. This is a cry wolf moment within the conservative movement. H.R. 1 does a whole lot of things, and they're all bad. It gets rid of congressional redistricting at the state level. It gets rid of photo ID. It gets rid of the bipartisan structure of the Federal Election Commission. It gets rid of a pre-registration for voting. It allows same-day registration for voting. It allows universal registration for voting. It allows felon voting. It doesn't legislate the 2020 status quo. I'm sorry if you can't understand that. At this point, I think some of the president's loudest propagandists, President Trump's loudest propagandists, are the worst enemy the right has to fighting the Democrats right now, because all they can do is relitigate 2020 when the nation has fully moved on from it. All they can do is argue about 2020. All they can do is say, oh, you didn't support us in the November election, claims about a stolen election, therefore we don't want to hear from you now. Okay. Everybody's going to shut up now. I don't think H.R. 1 can pass the United States Senate. That's one reason I haven't gotten super worked up about it. But I think you have to understand that if the Democrats had a larger Senate majority, it would pass. And I think you need to understand what the Democrats want. The progressives wanted 16-year-olds to be able to vote. And they couldn't get enough Democrats to agree with them. But you expand the pool of progressives in the House of Representatives, that's what you're going to get. Progressives want felons to vote, and a majority of Democrats agreed and passed that. Progressives want to eliminate states being able to set their own congressional districts. And the Democrats agreed. it's worth pointing out these are the things Democrats want. This is the Democratic wish list. As I said yesterday, H.R. 1 is a messaging piece of legislation. It always is. Democrats and Republicans alike use H.R. 1, the very first piece of legislation to drop in the House of Representatives, as a means to message what they would like to do. Rarely does it pass. In most cases, it does not pass because it never makes it through the Senate due to the filibuster. This will be filibustered. The Democrats aren't getting rid of the filibuster in the Senate. But please understand, the relevance of H.R. 1, even though it's probably not going to pass, is it shows you if the Democrats got full power, what they would do. The only thing standing between them and this is the filibuster. So it's why Republicans engaged in all their squabbling and retribution because you didn't believe the lie about the stolen election and they want to punish you and silence you. You can't. If you subtract all of these people who didn't believe the election was stolen from your coalition, you're left with an even smaller pool of people to fight. And if you premise your arguments on lies, those people aren't going to want to help you. Honesty matters now more than at any other time because you need the largest coalition possible to fight these people. And when you have crazy out there saying, well, all they're doing is ratifying the stolen election in November when more than half the country doesn't think it was stolen, well, you have marginalized and alienated yourself and therefore marginalized and alienated your credible arguments from those who would take them seriously. I mean, you got Aesop's fables in here. This is the boy who cried wolf. At some point, when the wolf is really there, people stop taking you seriously because you've lied so many times. The reality about H.R. 1 is it's a bad piece of legislation. And there's no sense in lying or attacking people who didn't think the election was stolen, who are concerned about H.R. 1, because the reality is it's so much more expansive. If you're listening to people who just tell you that H.R. 1 just ratifies what the Democrats did in November, those people are lying. And they're undermining the cause of stopping legislation like this in the future. Conservatives need to be honest. And honestly, we probably need to put some of those stolen election voices to the side right now so that the credible people who aren't a bunch of liars can actually fight the real stuff like grown-ups.
You can follow Erick around social media at
It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, if you would like to be a part of the program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. The Washington football team. We've just moved on from the Washington Redskins altogether, have we not? They're no longer the Redskins. They're the Washington football team. Well, the Washington football team has decided they're getting rid of their cheerleaders. After more than 50 years, they're going to replace it with a co-ed dance squad as part of their rebranding effort. This is from John Kim at ESPN. The team had announced last month the cheerleading program was paused when it decided what direction the rebranding would take. Petra Pope, hired by the team as a senior advisor focused on creating game day entertainment, said the goal is to create a more modern franchise. With that comes inclusivity, diversity, and in my mind, as an entertainer, athleticism. Pope told ESPN, "My desire is to create a team that is all of that: inclusive, diverse, co-ed, athletic, to set the gold standard in the NFL. We're looking for that super athlete that can dance, perform tricks and stunts, and manipulate whatever props that will create a really good show." Oh! The cheerleaders' contracts expire March 31st. There are no events scheduled this month. They're paid hourly. The captain of the cheerleading squad, Candace Cornell, questioned the team's rationale for making the decision. The former cheerleaders are eligible to try out for the dance squad. They'll probably hire 36 dancers or more. So apparently the team president, Jason Wright, says the team wants to create halftime programs like those in the NBA. Pope spent 33 years in the NBA, started with the Lakers as the manager of the Laker girls. Washington started using cheerleaders in 1960. Okay. First of all, depending on where you are on the field, you almost never see the cheerleaders anyway. I'm not sure why they still have cheerleaders. I mean, to be honest, I appreciate the cheerleaders, but I'm not sure when hardly anybody really sees them unless they're on camera. But the whole idea of we're going to do co-ed dance team now. The whole thing just strikes me as super silly. But we are in super silly age, are we not? We are totally in the age of the super serious, super silly nonsense. And that, of course, is part of what we're dealing with overall, is we got to deal with the super serious, everything's got to be diverse, inclusive, tolerance, acceptance. And that's fine. But the whole idea of shaking up the cheerleaders, I don't know. I don't know. This century people are going crazy in this century. People are losing their minds. All right. We need to move on. When we come back, I want to get into some Georgia news. There's some stuff in the legislature that you need to know about, including some changes to education that may be coming that you may need to get involved with. Now, before we get there, though, the Washington Examiner has a piece by Kristen Soltis Anderson. I need to get Kristen on the program. I need to do a podcast with Kristen or Patrick Ruffini. In 2017, Kristen writes, shortly after the inauguration of former President Donald Trump, presidential counselor and campaign manager Kellyanne Conway took to the stage at the annual Conservative Political Action Conference and quipped that the event would instead be TPAC that year, a nod to the idea that the gathering was becoming a celebration of an individual more than an ideology. The development underscored a fundamental truth of politics. Everyone loves a winner. Nothing succeeds like success. 1 year earlier, Trump had pulled out of attending the conference altogether due to an expected walkout during his speech. Trump's victory in the Republican primary came despite upending traditional conservative orthodoxy and winning over voters who were less ideologically focused. As Nate Silver, 538, put it at the time, to me, the most surprising part of Trump's nomination, which is to say the part I think I got wrongest, is that Trump won the nomination despite having all types of deviations from conservative orthodoxy. Since that time, the discussion of the relationship between Trump, the GOP, and the conservative movement has continued. Post-election, there's been a fresh round of discussion about what is next for conservatism and what conservative voters want. In these discussions, the word conservative is often used interchangeably with Republican or with Trump supporters. But in understanding the future of the ideology, the party, or the political fortunes of Trump himself, it is valuable to understand the extent to which they do and do not overlap. To better map out the right, I took a look at data from the last 3 months of national surveys from Echelon Insights, my firm, Echelon Insights. With over 3,000 interviews from a representative sample of voters, we found 43% of those polled belong to the political right, either because they consider themselves Republicans, conservatives, or favorable to Trump. Only 13 are part of all three of the groups, highlighting interesting differences in the way voters on the right think of themselves personally. First, despite the increased ideological sorting that has meant the near extinction of liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats in federal office, conservative is not completely interchangeable with Republican. Thank you. I've been saying that for a very long time. Conservative and Republican are not the same unless you're a talking head in the media, not named Erick Erickson. Even among those who describe themselves as both Republican and conservative, there are varying levels of intensity. 1/3 of conservative Republicans in the February survey described their Republican identity as not very strong Republican. Furthermore, conservative Republicans were split down the middle as to whether they were very conservative or somewhat conservative. When you layer in views about Trump, the picture gets even more complicated. It's true that Republicans and conservatives alike are quite favorable to Trump. 83% of conservative Republicans say they view him favorably. However, when we break out by intensity, very favorable versus somewhat unfavorable, we see conservative Republicans are split roughly down the middle between those who hold a very favorable view of the former president and those with a less favorable view. We found 70% of liberal Democrats are very favorable to President Biden, a finding that might surprise those who think of Trump as being more beloved by his party's ideological wing than Biden. Remember, everybody loves a winner. Essentially, you've got a great sorting out. I thought it was very notable that at CPAC, only 68% wanted Donald Trump to run in 2024. You would think it'd be much higher than that, but it wasn't. It was not. And there is a great sorting out happening in the Republican Party, but on a lot of issues like H.R. 1, the GOP has got to stay unified. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number, if you want to be a part of the program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Listen, I need you guys to follow along with me here, but I'm in the middle of making something easy for you that I haven't done in a while for those of you who are new listeners. This is, I think, an important measure here. Well, nope, can't do it that way. There's a piece of legislation pending, and I have been, the amount of computer problems that I have run into trying to get this done is somewhat absurd. Every time I try, the whole thing crashes on me. And it is that important that I sit here and talk to you and talk to you while I'm doing this, because bear with me here. It's that important. And it's something many of you have never done. And I want you to be able to experience it with a good cause. I pay for an action center. With the action center that I use with my listeners, no one else in radio in America does this. There is not a radio program in America, local or national, that does what I'm about to let you do. And I feel strongly in my heart, as much as I love radio, and let me just say this out of the gate. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I wouldn't retire. If I won the $1 billion lottery, I would absolutely buy a house at Lake Burton and buy a house on the beach in Hilton Head. And I would get net jets. Oh, yes, I would. But I would spend every last penny after those purchases making a better radio product. I would buy a studio. I do this out of my house, in a studio in the house. I would buy a bigger studio, better cameras. I would live stream. I would hire a better producer. I would do all sorts of stuff. I wouldn't hire a better producer. My wife won't let me. I've got the best. I love radio. But in my heart of hearts, I'm also a conservative activist. When Rush Limbaugh died, I played the clip of him saying that he never really wanted to be the conservative personality, the conservative politics guy. He just wanted to be the best there was in radio. I love radio, and I want to be the best talk radio show host. I'll never be as good as Rush. No one ever will be. But I'm also a conservative activist, and I think that I should be able to empower you to make a difference. And we need to make a difference right now. There's a piece of legislation in the Georgia House of Representatives that will improve the lives of an inordinate number of children, but not enough. It is, however, a good start. There is a piece of legislation in the Georgia House of Representatives. It's made it out of committee on a party line vote. It is House Bill 60. It is authored by Wes Cantrell. Let me read you the title of it. To amend Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to education so as to provide for the establishment of personalized education plan accounts, to provide for definitions, to provide for qualified education expenses, to provide for qualification for students to participate in the personalized education plan account program, to establish certain requirements for participating schools and service providers, to provide for accounts and account funds, and on it goes. This is a fancy way of saying, here, ladies and gentlemen, finally, in the state of Georgia, is a school voucher program that allows the underprivileged, the poor, and the disabled to go to a private school for a better education. This legislation meaningfully improves the lives of the disadvantaged. Unfortunately, the legislature is hesitant to do any sort of school voucher program, despite all of the data in every state showing how popular it is and how much it helps Republicans and conservatives. The Georgia legislative Republicans are the most skeptical of this. So to get it going, this plan is narrowly tailored. Wes Cantrell is a minister. He's got a minister's heart. He's at First Baptist in Woodstock. He has authored HB 60 in the Georgia House of Representatives. It would allow students a school voucher to go to a different school than their public school for a variety of reasons. Let me read you the criteria. The student is part of a family whose income is below 200% of the poverty level and enrolled in a public school. The student has been adopted from foster care and was enrolled in a public school in the state immediately prior to adoption. The student has a parent who is an active duty military service member stationed in Georgia within the previous year and the student's in public school. The student is currently enrolled in a public school and has an individualized education program written as state and federal law, or has a formal diagnosis from a licensed physician or psychologist of a Section 504 plan relating to one or more of the conditions: attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism, bipolar disorder, cancer, cerebral palsy, cystic fibrosis, deafness, Down syndrome, drug or alcohol abuse, dual sensory impairment, dyslexia, emotional behavioral disorder, epilepsy, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, muscular dystrophy, specific learning disability, spina bifida, traumatic brain injury, visual impairment, or any rare disease by the National Institutes of Health Genetic and Rare Disease Information Center, or has spent the previous school year enrolled in a public school in which part of the local school system is not offering an option for 100% in-person instruction. If the student meets that criteria, and that's a limited pool of students in the state would help that child go to a better school. Conservatives, you have no reason to oppose this. This is a deeply conservative plan. It would meaningfully benefit the lives of kids in the state of Georgia. And it is the Republicans who are the chief obstacle to it. It needs a vote in the House of Representatives. Now, this gets me back to where I started. To my knowledge, I'm the only radio host in the country that does this. I have an action center and I want you to use it. In fact, I'm going to do it with you right here. If you text to the number 3377, you text the word data to 33777, you're going to get back a link. And it says support HB 60. If you click that link, you will go to my action portal and you put in your name, you put in your home address and zip code, you put in your phone number, and you put in your email address. You got to put all that information in for it to make it through the state system. And when you do that, when you put in that information, it will automatically generate an email. It'll automatically generate an email to your state representative. And it will tell your state representative, I'm a constituent and I care about kids and I want them to go to good education and I want you to support this legislation. You've never used this action center before, I suspect. Now's the time to do it. This action portal is easy to use. I can see right now about 53 people have already in just the last minute texted data to 33777. You have the opportunity wherever you are in the state of Georgia to be heard and to take action on this. It will generate an email. to your state representative. And as the need comes for you to make phone calls, I'm able to send you a note back and say, hey, they got your email and they're not listening. You need to call them now. And I can redo it and open up the phone lines in it. And it'll put you directly in touch with your state representative. Understand what you're getting involved with, though. This is a real deal school voucher program in the state of Georgia. It is a real deal school voucher program wherein you text data to 33777 and you will be emailing your state representative saying support this legislation because I support giving the poor and the disabled in our public schools a better education than they're getting right now. If you're a conservative, you should support opportunity for the poor and disabled because we are all created equal, but our outcomes are not guaranteed. And the best way to ensure a better outcome is to get a good education. And right now, our public schools are failing. I don't care if you're in Brunswick or Valdosta or Trenton or Dalton or Clarksville or Athens or Rome or Macon or Vidalia or Dublin or Statesboro or Swainsboro or Albany or Bainbridge or wherever you're listening. Text the word data to 33777. Over 100 of you have already done it in the last 3 minutes now. Hey, I got people listening to the program. I don't mean to be flippant with this, though. Georgia Republicans have been promising school choice for a decade, and they have never done it. And they've never done it because the Republicans themselves sabotage it. This legislation only helps a limited number of people. Consider it experimental. Let's see if it works. Let's see if it works. If it works, we're meaningfully improving the lives of kids whose parents are in the military right now in Georgia. We're meaningfully improving the lives of kids who are 200% below the federal poverty rate. We are meaningfully improving the lives of kids with special needs. I got a guy, I want to call him a friend, and we've never met in person. We interact online. He works for one of the major corporations in the state, and his son was just diagnosed with epilepsy. I've been trying to get a hold of the Dude Perfect guys because I know the son is a huge Dude Perfect fan. And I would love to be able to help them connect in some meaningful way. But I've been thinking about him because epilepsy is one of the conditions that would be covered under this. So that kid, I don't know his schooling situation, if he goes to public or private school. I know the family's been struggling. And I've enjoyed so much interacting with his dad. At some point, we're going to get together in person. Listener to the program. And anything I can do when I think of a piece of legislation like this, the meaningful impact it can have on a child like that. Got a friend whose child has hearing disability. Thankfully, she's in a great school. She wouldn't need this program. But I know others who would. And you yourselves can have a real impact by using the Action Center. No one else does this sort of thing. I believe I should not just vent about things to you on radio. I should help you have a positive impact. You can become a force. You can become engaged, and I hope you will. I hope you will text the word data to 33777. If you're in Georgia, this will generate an email to your personal state representative. It won't go to your senator, won't go to the governor, won't go to your federal congressman, it won't go to your federal senator, just your state representative meeting in Atlanta right now. And will say, hey, I'm a constituent. This is a good piece of legislation. Please support it. And if we can turn the tide on this, we will meaningfully be impacting the lives of kids across the state of Georgia. And we should all be willing to do that. It's time to fire up the Action Center, and it's time for you guys, instead of just listening to me, to actually activate. My job, I always view my job here as to motivate you, to educate you, and to activate you. And right now, you need to take action. Text the word data to 33777. And let's tell the Georgia legislature it's time to help get these kids in closed up schools, and these kids have special needs, to get them into open schools where they'll get a good education.
You can follow Erick around social media at
Well, if there was any doubt about my listeners, if nothing else, though, if you're a program director listening to this program, gracious, turns out people actually do listen to this program. Just remember when you get back, click that link, and you will be engaged. I'm flabbergasted by the number of you who were so willing to engage so quickly, all the way from the North Georgia mountains to the Florida line, literally from the Chattahoochee to the Atlantic. If you're just tuning in here, if you text the word data to 33777, I'll send you back a link. You can click that link, and that link will take you to an activism portal where you can tell your state representative to support a school choice initiative authored by State Representative Wes Cantrell that would allow the underprivileged in this state to get out of a failing public school and into a private school with the assistance of the state. It's a great school choice program. Now, let's go to the phones. Ralph and Macon, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Eric. Kudos on the previous segment, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm concerned about deceptive radio ads that I'm hearing with increasing frequency from Fair Fight, which I understand is Stacey Abrams' organization.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that these things are incredibly deceptive is really troubling. And what's even more troubling is I'm wondering if the conservatives or the Republicans in this state, given the history of the voting problems that we saw recently, are they doing anything to counter these kinds of efforts, these radio ads, and point out the fact that they are as deceptive as they are?
Not really.
It's
no.
just amazing.
It is. And I get them on, I have to listen to them down the line on my evening show in Atlanta. And it's, well, I do declare I vote by mail all the time. And those Republicans, they're raising my taxes so that I can't vote no more. I just, the whole thing is ridiculous. And yes, I'm aware of the ads. In fact, if you go on YouTube right now, you're going to see them as well. And they're trying to make the case that Republicans are going to have to raise taxes to cover all this stuff. The Republicans, however, they're not fighting it. They're not running a competing ad campaign. And the reason they're not, one, is they don't have the money. And two, their view is it doesn't matter because they're going to pass it anyway. And they let the Democrats complain all they want. They can't stop it. And that's kind of their view right now is if anything, I think they're missing it a little bit in that the Democrats are really trying to gin up a lot of angry opposition to them and make voters mad at them. They know there's nothing the Democrats can do to stop it, though, and they're going to redistrict before the next election, so they feel a little good about it. Y'all, I've got a new advertiser to the program, and I'm delighted they're with me, Omaha Steaks. I love Omaha Steaks. I'm an actual customer of Omaha Steaks, and I have been for a long time, and I hope you'll develop a long-term relationship with them like I have. I smoked a brisket the other day that I got from them. I need to get shrimp from them. They've got great shrimp. They do seafood. They do everything. Anything you can put on the grill or the smoker you can get from Omaha Steaks. Right now, they got the Butcher's Bestsellers. It's a great introductory package to Omaha Steaks. If you go to omahasteaks.com and you put Erick in the search bar, E-R-I-C-K, you will see the Butcher's Bestsellers. You're going to get pork chops. You're going to get fillets, butcher cut fillets. You're going to get burgers. You're going to get a dessert. I mean, they've got everything in this package you can think of. It's great. It's a great introductory package with an incredible value. You can't get this quality at the grocery store, nor can you get the value. If you were to buy all the stuff in this package at the grocery store, it'd be way more expensive. And if you order it by going and put Erick in the search bar at Omaha Steaks, you're going to get 4 free burgers and 4 free chicken breasts. The burgers are incredible, by the way. They're a special blend from Omaha Steaks. They are delicious, flavorful, and unlike your standard patty that you make from the grocery store meat, it doesn't shrink up on you on the grill. I love making smash burgers with them. Go to omahasteaks.com, put Erick, E-R-I-C-K, in the search bar, and you will get the Butcher's Bestseller package. You will get 4 free burgers, 4 free chicken breasts. Go get this package today. Try Omaha Steaks. Oh, and we'll get to it when we come back.
It only takes a minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it at doihaveprediabetes.org. But you're probably not going to. Nope. I'm sure you've got a perfectly good
All right, I'm looking. So I've got this fancy system whereby I can see people are engaged, and I can tell you, those of you in Brunswick, y'all are behind the rest of the state. You need to text the word data to 33777 and click the link, because you guys have clout in the state house, and we need you guys to engage on the school choice issue. So if you're in Brunswick, please consider texting the word data to 33777 and click the top link. Also, if you've texted the word data to 33777, the second link is for Tucker Brewing. If you want to support, they are doing well in the USA Today beer garden vote around the nation. They're the only Georgia beer garden on the list. We should help the hometown crowd. So if you text data to 33777, the first link is about school choice. If you click it, you'll go to the action portal for the show. You'll be able to generate an email to your state representative in Georgia, urging your state representative to support the school choice initiative, HB 60. If you click the second link, it'll immediately go to the vote page for Tucker Brewing up in Tucker, Georgia, and you can vote for them as the nation's best beer garden. One day I'll go with listeners. Now, we have other stuff in the state we need to talk about. Georgia has passed legislation. The state Senate in Georgia has passed legislation that would prohibit boys from participating in girls' athletics in the state of Georgia. Naturally, the media is critical of this. It's amazing how the media covers these things. They view it all as a civil rights issue. They view it all as an intersectional issue. That, the oppressed are the boys who want to play the girls' sports, not the girls who would be forced inappropriately to compete. It's aggravating the way this gets covered all the time. I've gotten used to it, but that's where we are now in the state. You got this antagonism from the media in support of transgender athletes. Senate Bill 266 would ban schools from allowing boys, transgender girls, the media calls it boys, from participating in sports that align with their gender identity. By the way, can I just note the confusion of the sentence? This is an actual sentence written in a newspaper publication designed to make you aware of an issue. Senate Bill 266 would ban schools from allowing transgender girls from participating in sports that align with their gender identity. If you haven't paid attention to the issue, are they talking about boys or girls? Is a transgender girl a girl who thinks she's a boy, or a boy who thinks he's a girl? What? It would be helpful if the media covered this issue and wrote a sentence like this. Sentence Bill 266 would ban schools from allowing transgender girls, that is boys who identify as girls, from participating in sports that align with their gender identity. You would be aware of they were still confused by this, and then they get canceled when they mess up. Here's the reality. Hormones and biology play a very large role in the prowess of individuals, in their abilities and capabilities on a sports field, in a gym, in competition. Being a boy who identifies as a girl gives you an edge. A middle school boys soccer team beat the U.S. women's soccer team. Let me say that again. Middle school boys beat the U.S. women's soccer team in a game. Biology matters. Science matters. People who scream about it and say it doesn't matter are anti-science. And increasingly around the country, you're having kids question their gender identity, and a lot of it is just cultural at this point. A lot of this is everybody's doing it, so we're going to do it too. Everybody's questioning it. I'm going to question it too. And you got to recognize at some point that there's something going on in culture right now. And we need to protect our daughters. If you're on a team, I personally think my preference would be if you're at a school that doesn't want this, that the school should make the choice. But we live in a world where it's one size fits all at the state level, and I would rather protect our daughters than allow the boys who can't compete on the boys team to decide, I want to compete, I want a scholarship, so I'm going to go pretend I'm a girl. There are people who do strongly believe, in fact, that they were born different than they are. I don't think we should shy away from saying it's a mental health issue. I don't think we should shy away from that. And we're not allowed to say that. It's cruel if you point out there's a mental health aspect to this. It's cruel if you do that, but it's still the truth. It's still the truth. And it is frustrating to me, frankly, to see so many people unwilling to recognize that fact. It's frustrating to me to see so many people who just don't want to accept the biological ramifications of sex. They, oh no, it's just gender. Y'all, it's really not. There really are issues. There really truly are differences. And I'm sorry it makes some people upset when you point this out. I'm sorry. There are people who don't like it if you bring science and biology into it. And ironically, it is oftentimes the people who are screaming the loudest about being pro-science who are the most anti-science on the issue. And they try to cancel you. They try to silence you. They say you're a bigot. They say you don't understand. Why are you so cruel that they bring in the people who have the tragic stories of my child doesn't identify this way. My boy does identify as girl. Why won't you? Why won't you allow them to do this? I'm sorry. But at some point, you do have to be mindful as well of the other people involved. It's not just about you. It's not just about your desire. It's also other kids involved as well. And people don't want to talk about that. They don't want to have the conversation. They want to distract from it. They want to call you a bigot. They want to cancel you. Mississippi, by the way, is doing this as well. Mississippi has actually passed it. It's only made it through a committee in the Georgia Senate. Mississippi legislators, this is from ABC News, listen to how they report it. Mississippi legislators have passed a bill that would ban transgender athletes from competing on female sports teams in schools and universities, one of over 24 similar measures proposed by state lawmakers nationwide this year. The state House voted 81-21 Wednesday to pass the so-called Mississippi Fairness Act. It passed the state Senate last month 34-9. The bill heads to Governor Tate Reeves for approval. A growing number of states have proposed legislation that would restrict transgender student athletes from participating in school sports. As of February 26th, the ACLU has tracked 25 states considering such bills, compared to 18 last year. Last week, Wisconsin introduced a similar measure. Idaho became the first state to pass a law banning transgender women from competing in women's sports last year. A federal district court suspended the law. It has yet to be enacted. Mississippi's act is the first of its ilk to successfully pass both chambers this year. Some have failed in committee, including South Dakota on Wednesday, Utah last month. Similar bill died in committee in Mississippi last year. Republican State Senator Angela Hill, who sponsored that bill and the one that passed the House Wednesday, told ABC News she was inspired to introduce the legislation after learning about two girls championship-winning transgender high school runners in Connecticut, where state policy allows high school athletes to compete as the gender with which they identify. Mississippi does not have a policy. This is what the media always says. The AJC did this here. ABC News is doing it in Mississippi. The state legislator could not identify any instance of transgender girls competing on girls' sports team in her state's high schools. So because it hasn't happened yet, even though it's happened in other places, why are you bigots trying to do this? And of course, naturally, the left, the human rights campaign, they're saying, you're on the wrong side of history. There's simply no justification for banning transgender girls and women from participating in athletics other than discrimination. Like all girls, transgender girls just want to play and be a part of a team with friends. History will not look kindly on this moment in Mississippi. But here's the problem, though. They're not really girls. I'm sorry, they identify as girls, but they're not really. Biologically, they're not. None of the girls on the team will ever grow up and have a potential risk of prostate cancer except the transgender girls. Why? Because biologically they're a boy. And I'm sorry if it offends you for me saying that. But at some point, we got to recognize that biology matters. And biologically, a transgender girl is a guy and tends to be more physically well-built, stronger, faster. You've got that situation in Connecticut, and it was heralded by the media, of course. Some parents within Connecticut's high school track and field circle expressed outrage when 2 transgender students took home top prizes at the state championship for girls. Transgender high school sophomores Terry Miller and Andrea Yearwood came in first and second place, respectively, in the 100-meter race at the state open finals June 4th, angering some parents. Miller also won the top prize for the 200-meter race representing Bulkley High School in Hartford, and Yearwood were born male, but they now identify as females. I think it's unfair to the girls who work really hard and do well and qualify for Opens and New England competitions. Sophomore sprinter Selena Soul, who finished 6th, told the Hartford Courant, these girls, they're just coming in. Social media users agreed with her sentiment. The Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference, which governs high school sports, said its rules align with state law and allow this. You're letting 2 biological males do this. There is resistance to it, and the media calls it bigotry. And I have to tell you, it's not bigotry. It's parental concern for their daughters able to compete. And in this day and age where we say everyone is equal and everyone has the same rights and there's no difference between the sexes, it turns out there actually is. Biology still matters. Testosterone and estrogen still matter. And allowing boys to compete with girls on a team gives them a competitive advantage over the girls in most sports. Not every sport, but most sports. And for the media and the left to attack you or me for saying biology still matters puts them on the wrong side of science, let alone history. It's just nuts. I have to tell you that we should be applauding the state legislature in Mississippi for taking a stand. And frankly, we should be encouraging the state Senate and the state House here. I guess we're going to have to fire up the Action Center later for that. Let's get HB 60. By the way, Dale Washburn just emailed me back from my Action Center. Already getting results in the Action Center. Dale Washburn just emailed back and said he plans to vote for HB 60. He is my state representative here in Macon. All of you take action. Text the word data to 33777. When you get that top link back, click it. Fill out the form and it'll generate an email to your state legislator telling them to vote for HB 60, the school choice legislation in the Georgia State House Representatives. Take action now. Stand up. Now, let me pull up the map so I can see who's falling behind and shame you. Brunswick is starting to engage now. Rome. Those of you listening on WRGA, you're falling behind. More people in Dalton have used the Action Center than people in Rome right now. So those of you in Rome, text the word data to 33777. Fill out that, click that top link and take action. The people in Athens and Macon are beating everyone else. Let's see. Clarksville, I'm going to be up there tomorrow. We'll have to have a talk. We got to get you guys up in Clarksville to text the word data to 33777 as well. Click that link. Take action. Only a handful of you have up there. Not to shame my listening audience. It's a big deal, though. We need everybody. All hands on deck. Support school choice in Georgia. It got out of committee for the first time. It's on the floor of the House. It's got to have a vote by Monday. That's crossover day. All hands on deck. Take action. Text the word data to 33777. Click that top link now, and let's get it done.
You're listening to the Erick Erickson Show.
Hello there, it is Erick Erickson here. Let's see. You know what? I need to remind you guys about Omaha Steaks. I gave you the wrong code earlier. It's habit. I need you to go to Omaha Steaks and put in the code Georgia. Georgia. I have a long-time relationship with Omaha Steaks. I've been a customer of theirs since I was in college. And now I have given them for gifts. I've gotten them for gifts. They have incredible customer service, and they've got incredible food. They've got sides. You can get an entire steakhouse quality meal, and you get it shipped to your door. You throw the meat on the grill, and it's perfect. If you go to omahasteaks.com right now and you put Georgia in the search bar, you will see a Butcher's Bestseller package, and it's got all their favorite cuts. It's a great introductory package to Omaha Steaks. What you do is you go to omahasteaks.com, put Georgia in the search bar, and you see this Butcher's Bestsellers package, and it's got hand-cut fillets, it's got burgers, it's got kielbasa sausage, it's got pork chops, it's got caramel apple tartlets. My wife loves caramel apple tartlets. She can't eat nutmeg. They don't have nutmeg in them. They're individually wrapped, so she can put them in the oven if she wants a nice snack. She can do that. And you can see all the other stuff at Omaha Steaks. But if you get the Butcher's Bestseller package from Omaha Steaks, if you were to go to the grocery store and get something of the same type of stuff, you wouldn't get the same quality, but you would also get it, and it'd be far more expensive. The quality and the value at Omaha Steaks cannot be beat. That's why so many people order from there. So go to omahasteaks.com and put Georgia in the search bar. You will get 4 free chicken breasts and 4 free burgers if you do. That's omahasteaks.com. You put Georgia in the search bar. You will get a package for my listeners wherever you are. We had to pick the code Georgia because I do this on my local show in Atlanta, and we used my name there. And I want to make sure that you guys get the credit for this, and they see people are listening all over the place. So put Georgia in the search bar. And if you put Georgia in the search bar, you get an incredible deal. You're going to get 4 free burgers, 4 free chicken breasts with everything they've got. And check out the rest of the stuff at Omaha Steaks. You know, I didn't actually realize until a while back that they had so much more. And there's also great stuff for meal prep. You can get individually sliced chicken breasts that are vacuum sealed and frozen. They're great for stir fry. You thaw them out. This is what I've started doing for this show, is in the morning when I get up, I get one of the chicken breasts out and I sit it on the counter and let it thaw while I'm on the show. 3 hours later, tends to be thawed out, and I can throw it in a stir fry and have lunch before I go to the gym and then do burpees and puke everywhere. But nonetheless, that's neither here nor there. Go to omahasteaks.com, put Eric in the search, or Georgia, put Georgia. You got to put Georgia in the search bar. All right. I had to redo that because those codes, they're going to trip me up. But I have a diligent producer who listens and then yells at me, and I get it right. Y'all, I'm going fly fishing tomorrow. I'm really excited. I'm really nervous. I mentioned this. I'm online right now. I'm trying to make sure I got all the stuff I need wardrobe wise. I got to run down to, I got to go down to Ocmulgee Outfitters in Macon. I got to get me some, well, all the stuff that I need just to make sure that I am duly, adequately purchased what I need to be able to do everything I'm doing tomorrow. I'm kind of nervous, but I'm not an outdoorsman. And now, of course, part of this is you got the wardrobe too. Got to go with the wardrobe. Got to make sure you got everything. You got to, and you know what I'm learning is a buddy of mine who I'm going with says, you know, you got to wear dark stuff. I tend to wear bright colors and blues and whites, and he's like, nope, you need to wear dark stuff the fish can see. So now I'm online during commercial breaks ordering up all the stuff that I need. Y'all don't care. When we come back, full disclosure, when we come back, I feel like I need to give you a heads up on this. We got to talk about porn. Got to talk about pornography. There's actually an incredible story that has hit the headlines about pornography. And human trafficking is a big issue about which I'm passionate. And these stories relate together. And I just feel very strongly we need to have a conversation about this because, well, a lot of this is happening and a lot of people don't even know it's happening, and it could happen to your kid. It's a terrible story that you need to know about, and please stick around. I will family friendly it for this radio program just to make sure it's acceptable. And also there is new data out and it's causing a meltdown among Democrats. You know, they tried to tell themselves Hispanic voters were voting for Donald Trump because he was a strong man and just like the tyrants, they fled. Turns out they liked his jobs policy. Hispanic voters and black men liked the president's jobs policy, and the Democrats are in complete denial. Wait until you hear what the actual data is now showing about all of this. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number, if you want to be a part of the program, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Glad to have you with me. We got a whole lot of stuff we got to do, and I want to begin by reminding people, particularly those of you just joining us, I need to recap something. Those of you who've been listening the whole time, bear with me. I won't spend the whole segment on this, but I need to recap for those who are just tuning in. It's that important. The Georgia legislature has pending in the House of Representatives HB 60, House Bill 60. It is a measure that would allow poor kids, kids with disabilities, and by poor, I mean 200% below the poverty line. So the really poor, those with disabilities, or those whose parents are active duty military in Georgia, it would allow them to get school vouchers to go to private schools. It would essentially expand the Georgia Opportunity Scholarship to allow the very poor, those with real defined diagnosed disabilities, and kids whose parents are active duty military to get the best education possible for them. Essentially, it's a limited pool trial run. It would be used first, and this is why there are some Republicans who are opposed to it. It would be used to help these kids get into better schools, potentially private schools. And there are those who are opposed to it because they're afraid if it's successful, it would open the door for other kids to also go to private schools. It made it out of committee in the House, and now it needs sufficient support that it can get a vote in the House, on the House floor. The Speaker of the House isn't a fan of giving kids access to schools, but if there's enough Republican support, he can't stop the vote. And so we need all hands on deck moment. And I have an action center. I haven't deployed it this year, and it's time. We got to do this. So I need you, wherever you are in the state of Georgia, to pull out your cell phone or your text messaging device. And I need you to text the word data to the phone number 33777. Text the word data to 33777. You will get back a series of links from me. I'm not here texting you. I've got it automated. You'd be amazed at the number of people who think I'm actually here texting you in real time. No, it's a computer system I use. And it will send you back a link. If you text data to 33777, you will get back a series of links. And the very first link says support HB 60. If you click the link next to that, p2a.co, that is my activism portal for my listeners. And you will see a form. You put in your name and address, your phone number and email address, and it will connect you. It'll figure out from that information precisely who your state representative is, and it will generate an email automatically written. You don't have to do anything. Just put in your info, and it'll generate an email from you to your state representative saying, please support HB 60. I am a constituent, and I want you to support it. That's what you got to do. So text the word data to 33777, and you fire it up. Brunswick has come on board. Those of you who are listening over on Lake Oconee, need you to get involved in this as well. Text the word data to 33777. Rome has suddenly engaged in this. Clarksville, you are doing great now. Everybody across our listening audience, except those of you in Southwest Georgia, we need y'all to engage as well. We need across the, Vidalia, come on, Vidalia. We need you guys to engage as well. Text the word data to 33777. Get our state house to adopt school choice for the truly poor kids in the state. We can show that it works. We can expand it. Now, I've got a delicate issue. I need to talk to you about a very serious issue. Full disclosure, I'm not comfortable talking to you about what I'm about to talk to you about, but it needs to be said. There is a lawsuit, Jane Doe's versus Girls Do Porn. 22 young women, college-age women, brought down a porn empire in California. And I need to explain this case to you. And I'm going to read to you from Ars Technica. Ironically, you know, when Rush was around, he and I would trade stories back and forth from this website. We both read it. It's a tech site. It definitely liberal, lots of stuff on global warming and the like. But it has a lot of interesting stuff. And we would oftentimes trade emails with links to different stuff we saw. I was reading the website this morning, and this story is horrific, but you need to know about the story, particularly if you got a daughter. You need to know. When she flew to San Diego in October of 2013 with her friend who found a modeling ad on Craigslist, Jane Doe 7 believed she would be paid $2,000 to do a nude photo shoot, and that photo shoot would only be released in Australia. Instead, she found a much different reality. Jane Doe 7 ended up filming a porn video under duress in a hotel room where furniture blocked the door, preventing her from leaving. First, Jane Doe 7 found out the photo shoot was actually a video shoot only when she was picked up at the airport by Matthew Wolf, a videographer working for the porn website Girls Do Porn. Doe didn't know that last fact either. She asked at least 20 times where the video would air before agreeing to do it. Both Wolf and porn actor Andre Garcia assured her the video would not go online, but it would instead be released on DVD in Australia. It was a believable lie given Wolf's New Zealand accent and the duo's consistency in telling the same story. Once Doe agreed to film the video, she was rushed through signing a contract and told we needed to get this done. Wolf and Garcia soon put furniture in front of the hotel room door during filming. Jane Doe 7 said she couldn't leave and was scared. I was being coached and I felt like I had to do it, she said during trial. It was so hard she bled. She locked herself in the bathroom while Wolf and Garcia tried to coax her out. Eventually, she finished the shoot and took a shower. But soon after the incident, she was harassed at work. Her video had been posted online. While she only looked at it on one website, others told her the video was all over the internet. She was too afraid to Google it, she said. She was far from the only woman duped into filming porn for the subscription website Girls Do Porn. Her experience ultimately led to a San Diego Superior Courtroom where, one by one, over the course of several months, 22 millennial women answered affirmatively when attorneys for Girls Do Porn asked them if they'd ever viewed porn online. Yet in this fraud trial, the women all claimed they believed the videos they shot, which were published among the library of hundreds of porn flicks, viewed collectively over 1 billion times, would never get posted online. How could millennial women living in an age where porn is almost exclusively viewed online ever believe their own videos would never get posted to the internet? To start, it takes a thought-out criminal scheme where the perpetrators were dedicated to leaving no paper trail. But Girls Do Porn's successful manipulation was possible because large swaths of society still label women who participate in sex work as cultural pariahs. The Girls Do Porn operators knew this, and they wagered that the shame the girls felt over appearing in pornography would likely ensure that they would never take the site's management to task for the fraud. But the girls stood up for themselves. Now a number of the men involved are off to jail. I raise this issue because this is increasingly common. And I don't know that most people are aware of it. And I don't know that most of them think it would ever happen to their kid. And what I am learning more and more is that the people who think it would never happen to their kid are usually the ones who find out it's their kid involved. Because the parents never bother to talk to their kid about it. They think, well, my kid's smart enough not to do something like this. And there was a story I was told. So I did an interview with a woman who had been the victim of human trafficking by her parents. And she and the organization she works with now rescue girls. And they were talking about a situation in Denver. Two girls went to the Delta Airlines counter in the Denver International Airport. They were high school seniors. And they had won a modeling competition on Facebook in New York City. Now, Denver is a hub for United. It's hard to get around about the country from Denver to anywhere on Delta because it's not a hub for Delta. There are flights from Denver to all parts of the globe on United, but not Delta. But these girls had managed to get on a Delta flight to take them to New York City for this modeling competition, and it was the Delta ticket counter agent who realized that it was a one-way ticket. The girls didn't realize that it was a one-way ticket. And so the Delta agent started asking some questions. Then it turns out the girls' parents really didn't know. They were 18, so it really didn't matter. They were just going to sneak off to the weekend for the modeling shoot and come back. And they didn't realize that they had one-way tickets. And the conversation changed pretty dramatically when the agent pointed it out to them. And so authorities were called while the girls stood there at the ticket counter. And New York authorities were notified, and they went to the hotel where the girls were supposed to be. By the time the New York authorities had gotten there, it was past the time that the plane should have landed. The girls weren't on the plane, and the hotel room had been emptied. The girls were about to be kidnapped and put into a human trafficking system that some people deny happens. One of the problematic areas that's going on right now is that there are some progressive activists as well who believe that we need to overcome the stigma of pornography, and sometimes you get the argument made that if people overcome their stigma and get comfortable with porn, then when bad things are happening in porn, people will be more comfortable coming forward. I don't think the answer is to define deviancy down and to normalize pornography. But it's a real problem, and I got to tell you that study after study after study after study after study shows that the parents who talk to their kids about these sorts of issues and talk to them about these stories, they're the ones whose kids don't wind up in these situations. It's the parents who think that it'll never happen to my kid that it happens. In these situations, it was college-age girls who found modeling opportunities on Craigslist. They do this online, Craigslist, Facebook, and ads on YouTube that they stumble across. Jane Doe number 1 in this case had completed her first year at California Western School of Law in San Diego when she filmed 3 videos. She questioned how she could have been duped. She had taken the contracts course. The woman replied that she didn't recall seeing the contract at issue. When her videos were posted online at a website called The Dirty, she asked them to take it down, believing its publishing was revenge porn. But the website's attorney posted a public response refusing to take the video down, arguing she'd agreed to do it. Jane Doe 1 took matters into her own hands. She retained an attorney. She then messaged other women doxxed on a website called Porn WikiLeaks as girls do porn models and to see if they had been duped. She began organizing. The women tried to confirm in writing what was being discussed in phone calls. The videos would only be distributed in Australia. They refused, the website then refused to confirm it. The website tried to retaliate against them. Thankfully, they had a judge who was very sympathetic to the girls. And people are now being carted off to jail because of it. Girls Do Porn owner Michael Pratt is on the run and on the FBI's most wanted list. The videographer Matthew Wolf is in jail awaiting custody. The actor Andre Garcia is going to be sentenced on April 23rd by a federal court judge. The videographer for the website is also going to be sentenced in April. The website right now is being sued for $2 million in damages for each girl and video as a human trafficking venture, which it was. These girls were willing to stand up and be heard and fight. Education really, really matters. I wish I had a more pleasant way to talk about this, y'all. It's not a super entertaining, exciting thing to talk about. But, man, nobody talks about this stuff. Nobody wants to talk about it. It could be your kid. It could be mine. You got to talk to your kids about this stuff. That's why I got to talk to you about it. Human trafficking is a big deal, and it's amazing the amount of intellectual capital being spent by some people, particularly proponents of the porn industry, say it's not really a big deal. It's overplayed. It's overstated. It's all political. It's moral outraged about nothing. Here's another reminder. It is real, and the best way to combat it is to educate your kids.
Well connected and well respected. It's
Hello there. The phone number here is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I would prefer you, instead of calling me right now, listen, I'm happy to take your phone call, but I would really like you, if you can, to also text the word data to 33777. And look, those of you in Vidalia are starting to engage, and I appreciate it. Those of you in Valdosta are starting to participate as well. You even got some folks in Savannah participating. Text the word data to 33777. Look at all of you now participating. This is great. We've got over 200 people now who have engaged, including someone who, well, they live in Georgia, but they say they're in Chicago. So thank y'all. This is meaningful, and it's something that you guys can do that other people can't, and I just really want y'all to be as engaged as possible in this issue. School choice is a big deal to improve the lives of kids. And if you text the word data to 33777, you can tell your state house member here in Georgia, where I am, that they should support this piece of legislation. Now, we do have to move on. Have you heard of epigenetics? My goodness, I've heard of epigenetics for a while now, and it is always from progressives. When you note, for example, scientists have never been able, and I don't mean this controversially, by the way, but scientists have never been able to find a genetic link to homosexuality. There are people who, it is conventional wisdom now that you're born gay or straight, but it's also now conventional wisdom you get to pick your gender. There's actually no scientific evidence, and people say, well, epigenetics. And now, of course, there are people who say transgenderism has a lot to do with epigenetics as well. Well, here's a funny one now. There are now people on the left who believe that trauma is also hereditary through epigenetics. There's I don't know Mel magazine, but they have an article about epigenetics. I've been hearing this forever from liberals when I say it's not science to say this. One of the things, and one of the problems here for a lot of people is it really is against science, a lot of this stuff. And one of the things that is reality is there's no science to back up the stuff. And so they say, well, epigenetics, they don't really explain it. They don't really understand it. They have theories, but it's like the people who say vaccines cause autism. It's been studied so often, and there are fringe researchers who say it's true, just like I know people who believe essential oils cure cancer. But just because people believe it doesn't make it so. So this Mel magazine thing, public interest in epigenetics has grown steadily since the mid-2000s when the news media began reporting on influential studies in the field with tantalizing headlines like a painful legacy, parents' emotional trauma may change their children's biology. And study of Holocaust survivors finds trauma passes on to children's genes. But the field's in its infancy. There's an enormous amount of scientists who don't know whether it's true or not, and there's a lot of skepticism about it. You'll routinely encounter claims that trauma changes your DNA or you genetically inherit your parents' pain and trauma, but it doesn't actually appear to be so. The Oliver Rando of the University of Massachusetts Medical School, who uses mice to study intergenerational information transfer, says it's quite clear from the research otherwise. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. We got people now engaged all over the state of Georgia in support of House Bill 60. This is so great. From the North Georgia mountains to the Florida line, from the Chattahoochee all the way over to the Atlantic. We got people who are engaged on this issue. If you're just tuning in, House Bill 60 in the State House of Georgia is a school choice bill that would allow kids whose parents are active duty military in Georgia and kids who have mental and physical disabilities and kids who are 200% below the poverty line to use state funds to go to private schools. It is a major school choice initiative, a trial run, a limited pool of kids, not enough to disrupt the public education budgets in the state, enough to give this a great trial run. And if you text the word data to 33777, I'm going to send you a link. And in that link, I am going to allow you into my action center where you can generate an email very easily. I've already pre-written the emails, and they'll go to your state legislator and encourage them to support House Bill 60. Right now, we got over 200 of you so far have engaged, so keep it up, please. It's a great piece of legislation. David Shore is a progressive pollster. Interestingly enough, David Shore got canceled this past summer. He is on the left, far on the left. He is a progressive. David Shore is a progressive pollster, statistician who got canceled by the left for saying something truthful last year. In the wake of the George Floyd riots, David Shore said that the vandalism and burning and looting that was going on could help the Republicans. And it made progressives livid with him for saying something true. And he got canceled as a result of it. Jonathan Lemire is an Associated Press reporter, and I want you to hear him on television in denial about what happened last summer.
Well, I think, Nicole, first of all, let's be very clear as to the different makeup of these protesters, of the people we saw in June versus the people we saw in January. In June, these were nonviolent protesters, racially mixed, a lot of young people, fueled by the Black Lives Matter movement, those outraged by the death of George Floyd, a black man killed under the knee of a white police officer in Minnesota. There was no violence there. The president instead cleared Lafayette Square, cleared the protesters with using military personnel as part of the response, using a chemical akin to tear gas, pushing them out in order to have a photo op. We remember his awkward stroll across the park and then standing there in front of the church holding a Bible as if he had never held one before. And then, of course, let's remember who was there in January. These were Trump supporters. They were white. They were people who, as has been well documented, if the racial makeup of that group had been different, the response at the Capitol likely would have been different as well.
I have said that I think conservatives need to be able to distinguish between what happened last summer and what happened on January 6th. What happened on January 6th was 2 months of provocation premised on lies about a stolen election, leading people to storm the U.S. Capitol, overwhelmingly supporters of the president. What happened last summer were people outraged by what happened to George Floyd, protesting in the streets. But you cannot deny, as this is a reporter for the Associated Press, saying that they were nonviolent protests. I'm sorry, but a building burning to the ground is not nonviolent. People being harmed is not nonviolent. To say that it was nonviolent is to lie about reality and lie about what happened. Yes, the George Floyd riots were premised on outrage over police violence, and not a lie. But that doesn't mean that they were nonviolent. They were. And David Shore progressive pollster got canceled for a while. Turns out he was right, though, and the left is paying attention to him again. And he's been interviewed by Eric Levitz in the New York Magazine. And the headline is David Shore on why Trump was good for the GOP and how Dems can win in 2020. Let me read you some of this. New York Magazine asked David Shore, what are the most important things you've learned about the 2020 election? What's changed since November is we now have individual level vote history data in a bunch of states, and we also have a lot more precinct level data, and people have had more time to run surveys, so the picture has gotten clearer. One high level takeaway is that the 2020 electorate had a very similar partisan composition to the 2016 electorate. When the polls turned out to be wrong and Trump turned out to be much stronger than we predicted, a lot of people concluded the turnout model must have been off. Trump must have inspired higher Republican turnout than expected. But that looks wrong. It really seems like the electorate was slightly more Democrat than it had been in 2016, largely due to demographic changes, because there's such a large partisan gap between younger and older voters. Every 4 years, the electorate gets something like 0.4% more Democratic just through generational churn. So Trump didn't exceed expectations by inspiring higher than anticipated Republican turnout. He exceeded them mostly through persuasion. A lot of voters changed their minds between 2016 and 2020. Now listen to this. At the subgroup level, Democrats gained somewhere between 0.5% to 1% among non-college whites and roughly 7% among white college graduates, which is kind of crazy. Our support among African Americans declined by something like 1 to 2%. Hispanic support dropped by 8 to 9%. The jury is still out on Asian Americans. We're waiting on data from California before we say anything, but there's evidence there was something like a 5% decline in Asian American support for Democrats, likely with a lot of variance among subgroups. There were really big declines in Vietnamese areas, for example. One implication of these shifts is that education polarization went up and racial polarization went down. White voters as a whole trended toward the Democratic Party. Non-white voters trended away from the Democratic Party. So now we're somewhere between 2004 and 2008 in terms of racial polarization. That's interesting. I don't think a lot of people expected Donald Trump's GOP to have a much more diverse base of support than Mitt Romney did. But that's what happened. So the reporter asks, does the available data give us insight into why? Do you have any sense what was behind the large rightward shift among Hispanic voters? Listen to this. One important thing to know about the decline in Hispanic support for Democrats is that it was pretty broad. This isn't just about Cubans in South Florida. It happened in New York, happened in California, happened in Arizona, happened in Texas. Really, we saw large drops all across the country, but it was notably larger in some places than others. In the precinct level data, one of the things that jumps out is that places with a lot of voters who have Venezuelan or Colombian ancestry saw large swings to the GOP, more so than anywhere else in the country. The Colombian and Venezuelan shifts were huge. One of my favorite examples is Doral, Florida, which is predominantly Venezuelan and Colombian neighborhood in South Florida. One precinct in the neighborhood went for Hillary Clinton by 40 points in 2016, and then for Trump by 10 points in 2020. One thing that makes Colombia and Venezuela different from much of Latin America is that socialism as a brand has a very specific, very high salience meaning in these countries. It's associated with FARC paramilitaries in Colombia and the experience with President Maduro in Venezuela. So I think one natural inference is that the increased salience of socialism in 2020 with the rise of AOC and the prominence of anti-socialist messages from the GOP had something to do with the shift among these groups. As for the story with Hispanics overall, one thing that really comes out very clearly in survey data that we've done is that it really comes down to ideology. So when you look at self-reported ideology, just asking people, do you identify as liberal, moderate, or conservative, you find there aren't really big racial divides. Roughly the same proportion of African American, Hispanic, and white voters identify as conservative. But white voters are polarized on ideology, while non-white voters are not. Something like 80% of white conservatives vote Republican. Democrats have won non-white conservatives, often by very large margins. What happened in 2020 is that non-white conservatives voted for Republicans at higher rates. They started voting more like white conservatives. And so this leads to a question of why. Why did non-white voters start sorting more by ideology? And that's a hard thing to know, but my organization, my partner organizations, have done extensive post-election surveys of 2020 voters. And we look specifically at those voters who switched from supporting Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump to see whether anything distinguishes this subgroup in terms of their policy opinions. Listen, pay attention here. This is important. What we found is that Clinton voters with conservative views on crime, policing, and public safety were far more likely to switch to Trump than voters with less conservative views on those issues. And having conservative views on those issues was more predictive of switching from Clinton to Trump than having conservative views on any other issue set was. This lines up well with trends we saw during the campaign. In the summer, following the emergence of defund the police as a nationally salient issue, support for Biden among Hispanic voters dropped. I think you can tell this micro story. We raised the salience of an ideologically charged issue that millions of non-white voters disagreed with us on. And then, as a result, these conservative Hispanic voters who'd been voting for us despite their ideological inclinations started voting more like conservative whites. The decline we saw was very large, 9% nationwide, up to 14 or 15% in Florida. Roughly 1 in 10 Hispanic voters switched their vote from Clinton to Trump. That's beyond the margin of what can plausibly be changed by investing more in Spanish media. And I don't think a shift that large can be plausibly attributed to what was said in WhatsApp groups or not buying enough in YouTube ads. The problem is more fundamental. As white liberals have become a larger and larger share of the Democratic Party, there's a narrative on the left of the Democrats' growing reliance on college-educated whites pulling the party right. That's wrong. Highly educated people tend to have more ideologically coherent and extreme views than working class ones. We see this issue polling in ideological self-identification. Pay attention here. Pay attention. College-educated voters are way less likely to identify as moderate. So as Democrats have traded non-college educated voters for college educated ones, white liberals' share of voice and clout in the Democratic Party has gone up. Since white voters are sorting on ideology more than non-white voters, we've ended in a situation where white liberals are more left-wing than black and Hispanic Democrats on every issue: taxes, healthcare, policing, racial issues, and racial resentment. So as white liberals increasingly identify as the party's image and messaging, that's going to turn off non-white conservative Democrats. White progressives who are the most vocal supporters of critical theory. It is white progressives who are the most vocal supporters of reparations. It is white progressives who are the most supportive of a host of policies designed to prop up the victimized minority communities of America. And in their embrace, it's not going to go well. I must talk here about a very sensitive topic. And it's probably going to get me in trouble, but it needs to be said. The racial biases that exist among certain minority communities, blacks versus Korean store owners, black and Hispanic voters in South Texas. You're not going to find white racism a problem there. There's antagonism between racial minority groups. What happens when the white Democrats in Washington push a reparations policy where everyone is going to give money to the descendants of slaves in this country? And the Hispanic immigrant thinks, why are my tax dollars going to pay for this? Or the Korean immigrant thinks, why are my tax dollars going to pay for this? Do the Democrats really think this is sustainable and see they're being pushed in this direction by the woke white progressives? Yes, it is true. There are black progressive activists who are demanding reparations. But it's not really, at the bottom line, a racial issue. It's a white issue. It's a white guilt issue by white progressives. And as those white progressives push the Democratic Party further to the left with their black voices who are highly progressive but not really speaking for the black community, and more Americans consider themselves conservative than progressive, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, the Democrats are playing with fire to begin with the reparations conversation. It's deeply divisive in the country. What do you think is going to happen, though, when they start taking money from immigrant families and say, well, we've got to give it to this class of people because their ancestors were slaves in this country, never mind that so many people died to free them? And a lot of these immigrants say, we've dealt with prejudice ourselves and we've been able to overcome it. We've been able to be successful in spite of it. The left wants to shout you down for making these points. They'll come after me for making these points. But it's true. Do they really think it's going to help them? More and more data is pointing to the fact that if the Democrats want to win, they're going to have to moderate on core issues in suburban areas and alienate their progressives. But to alienate the progressives, you know who they're really alienating? It's not their voters per se they're alienating. To move to the center on some of these issues like reparations, they're alienating the white donor class of the Democratic Party. And they can't afford to do that. This is why, despite the media's focus on a civil war among Republicans that may not be happening, there's real trouble brewing on the Democratic side, and many of them are defying the data. In fact, many of the Democrats believe that the Democratic Party is moderating because of the influx of white liberals. No, actually, they're moderating because of the black and Hispanic voters who are still there and haven't left yet.
You can follow Erick around social media.
Hi, it is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. This hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan in Noonan, Georgia. I hope you'll check them out, firstlibertyga.com. If you are in charge of the financial decisions for your business and you need creative lending solutions, access to credit, capital, 6 figures and above, check out firstlibertyga.com. Spend 5 minutes with them. See if you're a good fit. They want to help you get to yes with financial issues where a lot of banks are saying no. firstlibertyga.com. Couldn't do it without them. If you're interested in advertising on the program, go to ericericksonshow.com. Click the contact button. We are very happy to build a advertising relationship with you as we continue to expand. Well, the Democrats have another problem. Neera Tanden was their first problem, and now it is the Attorney General of California, Xavier Becerra. The Senate Finance Committee deadlocked on sending his nomination to a floor vote. An activist group has ratcheted up pressure on moderate Democrats. Becerra, Biden's pick to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, has come under fire from conservative groups for his track record on religious freedom, gun control, support for Medicare for All. The Heritage Foundation's Heritage Action for America unveiled 2 television advertisements focusing on Mark Kelly, Kristen Sinema in Arizona, and Joe Manchin in West Virginia. The advertisement, one of which will run in Arizona, the other in West Virginia, criticizes Becerra's decision to pursue legal action against nuns over contraceptive coverage mandates and his support for gun control measures. They're pumping $500,000 into the ad campaign to pressure Manchin, Sinema, and Kelly to torpedo his nomination because of Becerra's divisive history and lack of healthcare experience. The West Virginia advertisement targets Becerra's support of California municipal ban on coal imports. A senior GOP aide said the advertising campaign helps break through the media. Anything that highlights his record is helpful because it increases the price moderates pay for backing him, which is very true. Another Senate GOP aide notes Manchin holds all the leverage in the upper chamber. No idea what's going to happen, but it's a 14-14 split along party lines. The full Senate is going to carry the nomination, and the Republicans could extract major pain on this issue because Becerra is on the far left. And being on the far left, the man really is crazy. He sued nuns for not wanting to pay for abortion. That's how crazy. This is also the guy who sued pro-life pregnancy counseling centers because they wouldn't put up signs encouraging abortion. That's what this guy did. He's more far left than Kamala Harris was.
30.
And it's they're coming for him. The Republicans are. It's going to be interesting to watch Joe Manchin on this one. It's going to be interesting to watch Lisa Murkowski on Deb Haaland, the potential Interior Secretary. She may be obstructed as well. Maybe Biden shouldn't have gone so far left with some of his nominations.